Good morning, and welcome to the Stylo News Intel update. I'm your host, and this is your Middle East Situation Report for August 5th, 2026. Today, we're going to take a close, objective look at a highly volatile regional landscape. We'll be presenting the facts calmly and professionally to help you prepare for the weeks ahead. Think of this early morning explainer as a concise lead-in to our primary analysis.
Before we get started, a quick note that today's situational assessment is brought to you by ProWave AI. They're the developers of Stylo Intel Ops, the AI-powered open-source intelligence program that drives our data collection, as well as Stylo News, the commercial version available on the web and through their mobile apps.
Here is what's on the agenda for this morning's briefing. First, we'll examine Gaza as the central trigger. Second, we'll look at Iran and the escalation in the Gulf. Third, we'll cover the Lebanon and Yemen fronts. And finally, we will wrap up with our forecast and upcoming events.
Let's start with Part 1, Gaza, the central trigger.
Right now, Gaza remains the strategic center of gravity for the entire region. When we look closely at the tactical map of the Gaza Strip and the surrounding corridors, our bottom line assessment is this: Hamas is highly unlikely to voluntarily disarm in the near term. Looking at the open-source intelligence, there are absolutely no indicators that their leadership is preparing to demobilize or surrender their weapons as part of any negotiated ceasefire.
So, we're essentially looking at a fundamental impasse between the key decision-makers. On one side, Israel's strategy remains firmly focused on coercive military dismantling, prioritizing the complete removal of Hamas over a negotiated coexistence. On the flip side, Hamas's entire survival strategy depends on retaining its armed capabilities for internal control and bargaining leverage. As it stands today, neither side is willing to adopt the other's security framework.
Why does this matter to the broader picture? It's all about the ripple effect. The sustained tactical deadlock in Gaza is actively elevating the threat profile across the rest of the region. According to our latest estimates, the immediate, most probable path for escalation isn't a direct all-out conventional war, nor is it the sudden disarmament of Hamas. Instead, this deadlock is generating sustained asymmetric risks, specifically targeting Western military installations and diplomatic embassies region-wide.
Moving on to Part 2, Iran and Gulf escalation.
Shifting our focus eastward to the Arabian Peninsula, the immediate threat to Gulf Cooperation Council states remains high, yet conditional. The intent here is to coerce, not to destroy. For example, Kuwait recently intercepted drones targeting their vital facilities, drones attributed to Iran. What this shows is a clear willingness to test air defenses and apply political pressure, but critically, without crossing that threshold into mass casualty escalation. But make no mistake, this coercion carries severe economic consequences. At times, normal transit capacity through the Strait of Hormuz has plummeted below 10%. The strait is heavily contested right now due to maritime interference, the threat of boardings, mining concerns, and GNSS disruption, which is the intentional jamming of GPS and navigation systems. All of this creates massive second-order effects, like huge spikes in insurance premiums and the widespread rerouting of commercial shipping.
So how does this build into a broader operational picture? Tehran is employing a highly layered, coercive strategy. The vectors include selective ballistic and drone strikes aimed squarely at energy and military nodes, rather than civilian centers. They're also heavily utilizing deniable asymmetric attacks through allied proxy networks, like the PMF in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen. And, as we just discussed, they're maintaining severe interference with commercial tanker traffic. The objective is to constantly test thresholds and disrupt partner economies while carefully avoiding an overwhelming coalition military response.
That brings us to Part 3, the Lebanon and Yemen fronts.
Even though they are geographically distinct, southern Lebanon, specifically south of the Litani River, and the coastal corridors of western Yemen represent analytically identical flashpoints. The events unfolding in both of these regions have massive, compounding implications for international security and global trade.
When we evaluate them side by side, both states share the exact same structural vulnerabilities. Their internationally recognized governments are functionally intact, but they are incredibly fragile and highly dependent on external foreign mediation. Because they simply cannot extend sovereign control nationwide, strategic security decisions in both Lebanon and Yemen are being dictated almost entirely by armed, non-state groups, specifically Hezbollah and the Houthis. Finally, Part 4. Forecast and upcoming events. Monitoring the open-source environment gives us a really clear picture of the prevailing sentiment. When we look across international media, open-source analysts, and regional outlets, a broad analytic consensus emerges. By tracking key hashtags, the data indicates that state actors will overwhelmingly favor sustained proxy pressure and economic disruption over an all-out conventional war. The focus across the board remains firmly locked on high shipping risks and the deep vulnerabilities of these fragile states.
Based on the facts we've covered, here is your timeline for near-term watch points. Over the next 24 hours, you'll want to monitor closely for any selective drone or missile strikes targeting regional energy or logistics infrastructure. Looking ahead to 48 hours, assess any attempts by Houthi or Iraqi PMF elements to launch asymmetric retaliation against coalition positions. And as we hit the 72-hour mark, keep a close eye on maritime conditions, specifically looking out for continued commercial rerouting and congestion at anchorages around the Arabian Peninsula.
That concludes our morning intelligence brief, setting the baseline for the complex events unfolding across these regions. But as these tensions continue to simmer, the defining question remains: will diplomatic interventions outpace this cycle of proxy retaliation, or are we witnessing the dawn of a new, protracted regional conflict? Thank you for listening. Be sure to listen to the full Stylo News Intel Update podcast on your favorite channel and get AI-powered news on demand at stylonews.com. Stay informed and have a good morning.